Good morning, or should I say, begin saying good night. Welcome to Funky Rainbow's Book Bazaar this very spooky Saturday morning or night. I'm going to let you decide. Thank you to all our friends on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube who have joined us for this ghostly and ghastly session. We can see Rimjim Priyadarshini Tandan here bright and early at this bazaar, or should I say dark and early at this bazaar, full of books that we think are India's most haunted ones, really. So delighted that we're presenting a bazaar full of spooky, ghostly, ghastly books for children, young adults, and adults. Now, of course, many of you may be asking us, why we're doing a spooky bazaar when it's not even Halloween. There's always a good reason to do a spooky bazaar, but our most important reason being that our partner Muttama had her birthday yesterday, and we think this could possibly be the best birthday gift that we could give her. She is psyched of spooks and ghosts and spooky books. So, happy birthday out to Muttama, and all the spooky, we wish you all the spooky books in the world for sure. That is a good reason if ever there was one. And I can see Sujita and Bharti and Sham. All I can see around is their white teeth grinning back at me. Muttama, of course, is shivering in her chair. But delighted that we are presenting this ghostly and ghastly bazaar. I can see Rimjim Priyadarshini Tandan saying, Happy birthday to Muttama. Indeed, a very, very happy birthday. Of course, the fascination for all things scary. We are always, fascinated, even if we're afraid, we're quite fascinated by things that go bump at night. Why is that? We know whether we are children or middle grade readers or young adults or adults, we deliberately seek out horror films. We seek out scary rides in the amusement parks. We all want to go into the haunted house rides in the amusement park, and we pick books that feature ghosts, spirits, monsters and horrors of all kinds. A lot of counselors and psychologists say that this is pretty much because what we feel when we experience fear is very, very similar to what we feel when when we are excited. Your pulse quickens, your heart is beating faster, your stomach is going up and down, and you are really sort of pushed to the edge of your comfort zone, right? Think of all those spooky books you've read, or spooky films you've watched, or horror stories you've read and watched, and think of what you're feeling. Isn't that feeling very similar to what you feel when you're very excited? I think, I think that's one of the reasons that the allure of, the spooky and horror is so high in human beings of all ages. There's actually and the lovely part about reading these books of horror, or watching these films of horror, is that that it's the sort of fear that you can be in control of, right? If it gets too scary, you can close your eyes. If there's like some really terrifying passages, you can just skip and move faster, basically, right? And that feeling of the fact that you are in control of this fear is a very, very empowering one. I have a quote from a very well-known young adult writer who said, in reading books that frighten us, we have the choice of whether to explore our fears or not. But if we do, we come away knowing that monsters of all shapes and sizes can be defeated. Also, if you go back to your childhood days, or if there are children watching, that when you're reading these ghostly stories, most of the times, or even watching a film, or you are mostly doing it in the company of people. We rarely if you're being told a ghost story, there's every chance that there's like a gathering of people, or there's like 5 6 family members sitting around, huddled together, maybe holding the blanket quite close to themselves and listening to these stories together, right? And I believe that the closeness that tumbles out of, fearful stories is something that is really to be celebrated. It's really to be enjoyed. And I think we must encourage, as long as we find age appropriate books, ghost stories for children of different ages and for adults, we must let fear sometimes capture our imaginations. So we do today have a whole bunch of books of, featuring ghosts, many of the seriously haunted kind. But we do have some fun books, and as always, the books up on our website, www.funkyrainbow.com. Please click on the link on the tab that says Book Bazaar. The first drop down menu will be the ghostly and the ghastly. There are several books. My assumption is there are over 70, 80 books in that. In the ghostly and ghastly bazaar, we're going to pick and recommend 15, 20 of them. And there are happy ghosts, silly ghosts, social media ghosts, all kinds of ghosts that feature in the books that are in our bazaar. We may have picked some nice and spooky ones where the spills, chills, and thrills are guaranteed, but you can find ghosts for every reason and every season and every level of spookiness in our on our website. Please do consider ordering them if you feel that your children or even the young adults in your life or even you would enjoy these books. For our guests who watch on Instagram, we're going to do an interview later in the show. It's at 12:30, and we can't live stream that interview on Instagram. So if you can move at that stage either to YouTube, to Funky Rainbow's YouTube channel, or to our Facebook page, you will be able to catch this thrilling interview, about with a writer who has written some of the darkest ghost stories in India recently. So do make sure to tune in to either our Facebook or YouTube channel if you can. I'm going to, begin with, my recommendations this morning. And very, very aptly, the first one that we have for you is this splendid picture book called Book of Boots. What else? So, what is Book of Boots all about? It's written by that wonderful writer Shabnam Minwala and illustrated by Ruchi Bakshi Sharma. What is Book of Boots all about? Well, who whispers your name? Who howls suddenly in the middle of a book bazaar? Who whispers your name on a moonless night? Is there something out there? Maybe something, maybe nothing. But if you turn the pages of this book, you're definitely not going to think that there's nothing out there. What you hear is definitely there. And once you hear it, there is absolutely no going back. I can see Rimi Das saying, haha, I love the title. Absolutely a wonderful title. See, look at the way the author introduces some real terrific desi bhoots and prates. What wanders outside on this dark and moonless night? What howls from the treetops and whispers your name in the wind? Maybe nothing, maybe something. It depends on where you are, and it depends on what you believe. And from there on, we get introduced to so many Indian ghouls and ghosts. I'm going to show you just one spread. This one introducing us to a creature, a really fiendish creature called the Bark. Baak, the bark. What is the bark? It says, keep an eye on the ponds and rivers because the bark lives here. The bark has twisted arms and legs, and its eyes and mouth are on its tummy. If you meet a bark, don't worry. It's more interested in stealing raw fish than in scaring you. See? Useful tips on why you should not get scared by the bark. And from there on, we go to look to meet the Jilaya, the Yakshi, and all kinds of spectacular, creatures, fiendish creatures of the night. And the book has a fantastic open spread like this, introducing you to a wonderful creature from not from our imaginations, but this one is called the Skondokata. And you have to read the book to find out what makes the Skondokata so ghastly and ghostly. This one, published by Pratham Books, is priced at 60 rupees. And I mean, it's really hard to recommend the age groups for these books, but we'd say maybe 6 plus, but it depends on whom you're reading the book with and how you're reading it all together. I mean, come together as a family and read these spooky books. You're surely going to have a spooky ride of a lifetime. The next book that I'm recommending is this one from Karadi Tales, and you know what it's called? Again? Ah, that is exactly what the title of the book is. If you didn't hear it, tuck, tuck. That's exactly what this fantastic book by Shamitra Ranade and illustrated by Shiloh Sulman is called. Tuck, tuck. I can see Rimi Das saying books are ageless as well most of the times, and the best children's books, whether they're picture books or chapter books or books for young adults, absolutely to be enjoyed by adults as well. That's exactly what makes them ageless, right? Coming back to Tuk Tuk, what is this story all about? Tuk Tuk, where did that noise come from? Did you hear it? Is it a ghost? Yes, is the I don't know if there's a ghost in the Funky Rainbow office, all right, but there are certainly ghostly books in the Funky Rainbow office. And this sound is a sound that a young man hears everywhere when he visits a place, a little village nestled in the Sahyadri Mountains called Nanikhet. Now, this young man goes to Nanikhet, and the illustrations, the collage style illustrations by Shiloh Sulman, adding so much atmosphere to this story, to this little village where there's an abandoned mansion from which strange noises emerge. Wow, what a setting for a spooky story. So, young Zahir arrives at Nanikhet one night and he can't continue his journey because it's too late. It's a full moon night, as most ghost stories are set in full moon nights. And he's looking for a place to stay. What does he do? Vishwarao, the tea seller, tells him, I'm afraid this village has no hotels, it has no lodges. There's just one place that you can rest in for the night, and that's a mansion a little bit away called the Divan Khana. You can spend your night there, he says, if you wish. And then he says, not just if you wish, if you dare as well. Are you going to dare to read this book? What happens? Zahir, of course, has no choice. He has to spend the night in this mansion. And just as soon as he unfolds, a mattress that is lying and pulls up the blanket, the first thing that confronts him is, ladies, what? Tuck, 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 tuck. No more. We're not giving you, anything more of the story. But this one, published by Karadi Tales, priced at 175 rupees, is we'd recommend it for 6 plus year olds. And like I said, all these books up in our book bazaar. Click on the tab Book Bazaar once you get into our website www.funkyrainbow.com, and the first drop down will be the ghostly and the ghastly. All these books featuring there. And there's a discount. Please use the discount voucher that we've put up on the top of our website, and pick up any of these books that we're recommending today at a special discounted price. Our next book, yes, Duck Duck. We don't know if that's a ghost, but you will have to come and find out. Our next book this morning is again, quite it's a wonderful story. It's very, very beautifully illustrated, but it's quite spooky. This one called The Amuchi Poochi, written by Sharanya Manivannan and illustrated by Narina Kanzi, is of course the story of children, two young children who are grieving the loss of their grandmother. But when the story begins, the grandma is still alive. So there's Anjali and the protagonist of the story and their grandmother, Ammuchi. Now, you know what? I love the way Sharanya describes the Ammuchi. She knew how to kill mosquitoes with one quick clap. She sang songs with made up words, and she sang songs from films made in black and white. Ammuchi's mouth was always stained with betel nut juice, so she looked like she had been drinking blood. When she laughed, her teeth looked like she had brushed them with chili powder. Spooky enough, folks? Well, it's a lovely story of children and their grandmother. And, just in the course of the story, Amuchi is always, always telling them stories. And, especially story, I mean, like a grandparent bonding with her grandchildren over stories, this Amuchi does. And, I love that playful teasing that Amuchi has. Often and ever too often we have very goody goody grandmothers in our books. Well, this Amuchi, she looks at Aditya, who's the protagonist of the book, and she says, Aditya, what do you see on that tree? Mangoes, Amuchi. Look closely. What do you see? Leaves, mangoes, branches, and one parrot, Amuchi. You mean you don't see it sitting there with eyes big, big like two moons? And Anjali would start to cry, and Amuchi would start to laugh. We love this grandmother. The children, of course, go on to lose her. But her stories, the wonderful stories, how do they help children cope with the bereavement, with the loss of their grandmother? It's such a beautiful book. And like Rimi says, the artwork is indeed just completely spectacular. The wonderful covers, the wonderful colors on the pages, stunning illustrations, and gorgeous, poetic prose make this a moving story of, dealing with loss and bereavement. This one, published by Penguin, priced at 199 rupees. We would recommend it again for 6+ year olds. And if that's gotten too very spooky, let's bring you back with a happy, spooky book called Who's There? This is one of Duckbill's Hook books, written by Hansta Sawendra Shekhar and illustrated by Anupama Ajinkya Apte. What is Who's There all about? The title is a giveaway, right? So, who is there really? You have to read it to find out who's there inside the pages of the book. But it is so delightful. It's the story of a farmer and his wife who live on a farm with their daughter and two sons, and with them are goats and cattle and poultry, and a cat with many kittens. Now, one day, when the farmer and his wife are trying to sleep, the cats just simply start meowing. The cat lives up in the attic and with her kittens, and she starts meowing, meow, meow, meow. And they're like, shh, quiet, we're trying to go to sleep. But the cat keeps quiet, the kittens keep quiet for just a bit, and then in just a couple of minutes later they are going meow, meow, meow all over again. The farmer decides he's got to go up the attic and take a look at why the cat and her kittens are meowing. What do you think? awaits the farmer once he climbs up into his attic. This is a charming, charming ghost story, if ever there was one. Nothing scary about it at all. And it's delightful in the bhoot and the bhootni that make an appearance later in the story. But I'm not going to give away that bit to you. This one absolutely would work for 5+ year olds. And as you can see, large text and large illustrations, making it a wonderful early chapter book to read. You have to read this happy, spooky story. And I think the kids and adults who read it together will absolutely have a blast. This one priced at 175 rupees, published by Duckbill. What is our next? Another happy, spooky story for you. I mean, we have to mix it between the real haunted ones and the happy haunted ones for sure. Although my choice, especially for Mutama, was entirely haunted stories. I think I decided we should have some happy ones, and there are many, many in the bazaar list that are just perfectly jolly stories as well. We can see Rimjim saying, "My daughter has joined me for this session and she's already enjoying the reviews." How old is she, Rimjim? I seriously hope she gets spooked, and there are like some terrific spooky books which I hope she will, pick up and read. Rimi says, "I love the term happy spooky." Yes, with books, there's got to be happiness, even if it is spooky. Our next recommendation, again, for a chapter book that we love and enjoy at Funky Rainbow, Anushka Ravishankar's Zen and Anna series. And this one, called, which features Zen and Anna, two friends, is called Ghosts Don't Eat. What is the story all about? I can see Rimjim saying she's 4.8, she's almost 5. My gosh, I think Book of Boots may be right for her. Who's There may be right for her, but you can let her pick her ghostly choices, definitely. Now, what is the story of Ghosts Don't Eat? Well, Zain and Anna have a new neighbor. And what is that neighbor up to? I mean, Zain and Anna are really, really good friends, and you have met them in other books in the series, At Least a Fish and Just Like a Bug. The thing is, with Zain and Anna, nothing really surprises them. They can, the way they see it, that a dog can be a fish and a ghost can have teeth. And you can see on the cover if any ghost has a teeth. Now they have a new neighbor, and their neighbor is called Nikhil. Of course, they become friends. They're all playing together and doing a lot of fun things together. And then, they start to visit Nikhil's house. And what do Zen and Anna find? That some strange beings inhabit Nikhil's house. What do they decide to do? They decide they have to uncover this mystery, and whether there are really some strange creatures in Nikhil's house. And you know what? And you can see this book. Like I said, this is a chapter book for slightly older readers. We would recommend it to, 7+ year olds or 6+ year olds. Depends on the level at which, children are reading. The thing is, their worst suspicions, Zen and Anna's worst suspicion comes true, because they do think that there is a ghost lurking somewhere in Nikhil's house. And you know what? It has teeth and it wants to eat. Okay, guys, we are not giving you anything more away in this splendid, happy mystery. Again, like I said, it's a great one to sit together and read, parents and children. Never mind what the children's age is. It's going to leave you with quite a spook and quite a laugh. This one published by Scholastic, priced at 175 rupees. We would recommend it for 7+ year olds. Our next book, and like I said, we rarely feature too many Western books in our collection. It's not to say that we don't have Western books at Funky Rainbow, but we're picky and choosy, and we want to keep those ones that you can't find everywhere. And, a smattering of Western books in Funky Rainbow's collection as well, really the curated ones, in our collection. The next one that I recommend is, of course, by a foreign writer, and it actually came to us just yesterday. So I zipped through it in the middle of the night, way past the witching hour. And I'm happy to tell you that this is not such a scary story after all, but a fantastic one by James Patterson and Chris Grabstein called Scaredy Cats. How many scaredy cats out there? I can see a few in front of me in my office, definitely, really. But and this duo, James Patterson and Chris Grabstein, having done many, many books, for young readers. This one we would recommend again, we would say 8+ year olds, certainly. What is the story all about? Well, there are two shelter cats called Poop and Pasha, and they have now moved in with they have been adopted, and they have moved in with their human family. But is it a happy ending from there? Oh, well, they have to confront a ghostly bully. And who is that ghostly bully? None other than a scaredy cat. Now you have to tell me, what are Poop and Pasha going to do? Because scaredy cat is truly, well and truly bullying them. You know what he says he's going to do? If they don't follow his rules, he knocks over the lamps. He poops all over the place, picking up kitty litter from here, there, everywhere, and throwing it around the house, and even threatens them in the manner of good bullies to send them back to the animal shelter. Are Poop and Pasha confounded? It doesn't take much to bully a scaredy cat back, or to scare a scaredy cat back. But what they want to do is to find out who really is this ghostly scaredy cat. Do they succeed? Can they make him stop his mischief making for good? What a cracking good read this is, and absolutely jolly enjoyable story that 8+ year olds will enjoy. Very few pictures in the pages, so some of the chapters have illustrations like this, but you've got to read this one to find out if Poop and Pasha get the better of the ghostly scaredy cat in their lives. And of course, as you read many ghost stories, you will realize that there are so many layers of meaning that you can extract from these stories. This one published by Penguin Random House, priced at 399 rupees. I'll do a clutch of more books before I say hello to all our friends. There is, of course, more, mysterious, ghostly reads that are coming up, and there are some seriously, scary, haunted ones coming up later in the show. But my next recommendation for you is this not so old book again called The Booth Busters of Himmat Nagar. How many of you remember watching a movie called The Ghostbusters? I'd say just move over Ghostbusters and say welcome to the Booth Busters of Himmat Nagar. You already know what follows. You know what's going to happen when you see the title of the book, I'm sure. So there's three dead men in the story. There is a mysterious trail of chocolate eclairs, which is really delightful. There is a potter who keeps fainting, and there are five friends. What do the five friends do? They find that three men have inexplicably been found dead in their village of Himmatnagar. I can see Rimi saying ghost stories by Ruskin Bond are quite fun too. We have I think at least 25, 30 books written by Mr. Bond in our spooky bazaar, and we have decided to showcase just a little later some seriously spooky ones by Mr. Bond. But yes, his ghost stories are just fantabulous. I think people living in the hills, they can really see ghosts. That's what Bond makes us believe for sure. But to come back to Himmat Nagar, there are these five friends: Kalki, Angad, Munkud, Vasuki, and Govind. How have three men been found inexplicably dead in Himmat Nagar? Who has caused their deaths? Is it this nervous, fainting Potter Biru? Is it a strange young man with matted hair who has made, his way into the village? And what do these kids have to do? They have to follow a string of clues and, uncover this mysterious death of three men in the village of Himmat Nagar. Of course, this trail, it takes them straight to the village cemetery. Aha, all the excitement and all the action begins once you hit the cemetery, folks. I'm telling you, once you read the Bhootbusters of Himmat Nagar, Ghostbusters, just jazz off. Give us our Boothbusters any day. We'd recommend this for 9+ year olds, and I can see Rimi Das saying ghost stories. Definitely going to get this one, Boothbusters. Yes, it's loads of fun. Avyukt and Ameya Nair there. Lovely to see you at our spooky bazaar. Ghost stories by Ruskin Bond scare my dad now also, is what Avyukt or Ameya, are saying. And we think, man, he should rightly be scared by those stories. I hope all of you read them together. But Boothbusters of Himmatnagar, priced at 250 rupees, published by Scholastic, and we would recommend it for 9+ year olds. Rimjim saying, we read Noon Chai by Aditi Rao, and it was so amazing. Now we can't wait to read this one. Yes, indeed, a wonderful story set in Kashmir, and all about the power of books and reading. That is Noon Chai by Aditi Rao. This one, a rollicking good read for sure, and a fantastic mystery. Our next set of books, next recommendations are, very popular with young readers because they are this set of books called Flipped. So here there is, you can, there's ghost stories, and you flip it around and you get adventure stories. And the next one, that is scary stories, and you flip it around and there's funny stories to read, which means there are stories to read aage and piche. Like in the, you pick up ghost stories, there are five or six stories that you can read, and then you turn around and you can read five or six adventure stories. Jolly good fun, these flipped ones are. But the ghost stories, and I'm going to pick up one of my favorite ones in this collection by that master storyteller, Ranjit Lal, called A Crick in the Neck. I thought I was going to get into reading one happy, funny sort of story. And Ranjit Lal, of course, he leads you down a merry path. You only don't know that it's going to end in some ghostly mountain road. Well, what is A Crick in the Neck all about? It's about this young boy called Saurav, whose mother and father are top notch surgeons and have to go off to the US to attend a course that is going to a course in a university. And as he says, he in fact he writes so well, both mom and dad were high powered surgeons and were going to America for a 3 month stint at some famous university hospital to update themselves with all the latest gruesome surgical techniques that they would not be able to try out on guinea pigs here. Well, look at the way Ranjit Lal writes. I was, of course, not accompanying them. I was going to have to go and lived with Nani, who lived in the back of the Beyond place, high up in the mountains, and was one hell of a straight-laced disciplinarian who really ought to have been a general in Napoleon's army. Of course, this Nani. And what kind of Nani is, what kind of Nani is she? Another spunky Nani. So when Saurav gets there, she's like, he's looking at her and he's like, so what's there to do here? He looks so bored. I asked my grandma belligerently on my first morning. She gave me one of her looks. Walk, she suggested. You certainly need to. Your mother said you've become really slothful. There are some lovely trails around here. And of course, Saurav knows that there's no other option but to go on a walk. On one of these walks, he meets a young girl called Ankita, and there's a hint of a romance that blossoms between Saurav and Ankita. But as you come closer to the end of the story, and should I tell you or should I not tell you, there's the secret discovery that Ankita is a ghost. And is Saurav a ghost as well? I'm not going to tell you anything more about this delightful, wonderful, and how does the crick in the neck feature? I should just say broken necks do feature in the story. All right, nothing more, for all of you. This anthology of fantastic ghost stories, and not, all terribly scary, but truly, truly spooky. Priced at this anthology, priced at 225 rupees. And if you're reading a ghost story and just get too spooked, simply turn to the other side and read one adventure story. Similarly, from this anthology of scary and funny stories, there's one story called The Air Hostess by Soumya Rajendran. Again, very well known writer. That's the one that gave me the heebie jeebies. I show you my nails, they've all been chewed up reading some of these stories. What is the story of The Air Hostess all about? And I love it. I love it that, these stories feature quite wicked grandmothers, wickedly funny grandmothers, rather, not wicked in the wicked sense of the way, really. So here's, the story of the air hostess, and Aman, the protagonist of the story, is flying back to meet his parents, with his amama, or his grandmother. And he is just totally taken in by one of the air hostesses. She is, I mean, she's ready to give him some extra chocolates. She's, ready to give him an extra pillow or two or a blanket. And Nikita, as the air hostess is called, Aman and Nikita absolutely chatting with each other. And Amama, so perceptive she is. She quickly, looks at Aman, sizing him up and down like that. And of course, she can't say Nikita. She says Nigita, as she calls the air hostess. And she says, falling in love with Nikita? She asks Aman. And he's like, just keep quiet, Amama. No way. I don't have a crush on Nigita, as the grandmother calls her. And they've come back home to their parents, and the grandmother lets in that Aman probably has a crush on Nigita. And the whole squabble between the grandmother, and squabble in the sense argument, and lovely sort of arguments that go back and forth between Aman, his amma, and his amama. And then as you reach the end of the story, the phone rings, and it is Nikita on the other end of the line. What announcement is she going to make? Man, you're going to jump out of your pants when you hear that announcement. It's not as scary as I'm making it out to be, but yes, some good scary stories to sink your teeth into. And like I said, if you kind of feel It's too spooky, it's too and read some funny stories. These are stories that would work for 9, 10+ year olds. So really nothing to be so scared about at all. But yes, good spooky and ghostly stories. I'll say hello to many of our guests who've joined us this morning. So glad that so many of you are here watching a spooky, ghostly, ghastly bazaar. Hi and welcome to Prisha Bora, to Ina, to Bhavin. Hi, Bhavin. Been a really, really long time. I hope you're going to pick up some seriously spooky books from our collection. There's Princey Aurora, there's Halfling Rogue, there's The Drawing Den, there's Gala Pinal, there's Mini Kanika, Shweta Jagannathan, Lavanya Swaminathan, Satya Shrujan Reddy, Art Beat, Anush, Annapurna, Raw Pav. Very, very warm welcome to so many of you. This spooky Saturday morning, night, you can decide because Sham has like set up the whole thing in a really, really spooky manner. There's Raw Pav, Ekta Sapra, Sam's Unicorn World, Nandini Nair, what a pleasure to see you here at the bazaar, as Aarti and Mamta as well. So lovely to see writer friends joining us to see some of these seriously spooky recommendations. Mondal Deblina, Vinita Stories, how lovely that you have joined us too. Rimjim Priyadarshini Tandan, Rimi Das, Harpreet Kalkate Bhatt, Divya Menon, Avyukt and Ameya Nair. What a pleasure to see you all at our seriously spooky bazaar. I can see Shantanu Datta Gupta here, and he says, "Hi, gang, what did I miss? Some seriously spooky stuff." Shantanu, publisher from Scholastic India, so glad that you've joined us. We just decided to boot the Ghostbusters out and welcome the Booth Busters of Himmatnagar as our new ghost hunters, Shantanu. That was your book, as was Zen and Anna's Ghosts Don't Eat and some other seriously spooky stuff. Thank you for joining us at the bazaar this morning. I'm going to continue with a clutch of more spooky recommendations, and we do have another one from Scholastic, which is again a happy, spooky story because, like I said, we have seriously spooky stuff, but we also have spooky, spookier, and spookiest kind of books in the collection. And this one is a jolly spooky tale. This one, again by Shabnam Minwala, whose book we opened the bazaar with, called The Book of Bhoots. This one, The Strange Haunting of Model High School, written by Shabnam Minwala. And what is this story all about? I can see Shantanu laughing, and yes, good reason to laugh, but be scared, very, very scared, my friend. All is not well at Model High School. This is, a school setting in a story. There's all kinds of smells in the school. What kinds of smells? The smells of rotten boiled eggs. There's all kinds of sounds at Model High School, and these sounds emanate from the classroom. There's wicked teachers, there are mean monitors, and there's all kinds of supernatural goings on that which make you feel that the school is going to be taken over. And there is a school play practice that is going on. It seems to the best friends in the book, Lara, Mallika, and Sunu, that somebody is making a serious attempt to sabotage the school play. Is this person who's trying to sabotage the school play for real or a ghost? You have got to find out, what do the three best friends do? What do Lara, Mallika, and Sunu do? And can they save the day? Can they save their play? Can they save the day? And can they ensure that Model High School is not as dark and spooky as our office, but actually a happy, bright place? What a rollicking read it is, and with tinges of suspense which make you want to keep turning the pages over and over. And, very quickly to the end, we would certainly recommend, and we love Shabnam Minwala's writing. You can see that there are some illustrations on the pages, and she takes you right into the stinky, ghostly model high school to find out what those strange hauntings of the school are all about. Published by Scholastic India, priced at 250 rupees. I can see Sunila Kulkarni Gupte. Hello, Team Funky Rainbow. A lovely grey day in Bengaluru, just right for ghost stories. How very well said, Sunila. We, in fact, began saying, our bazaar saying that often you will notice that when we read ghost stories, or when ghost stories are narrated to us, or spooky stories are narrated to us, we're doing it in the company of people, we're doing it in the company of family and friends. And you're typically, you snuggle together, maybe you wrap your blanket around closer to you, if at all it's like a cold place, but otherwise you huddle together. And I think that serious that kind of closeness is so conducive. I think a good scare really makes people bond together a lot better. And yes, the weather in Bangalore, a gray rainy day, absolutely suiting the theme of our ghostly and ghastly bazaar. I can see Remy saying, it's such a lovely session. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm enjoying the recommendations. Thank you so much, Remy. Lots of more recommendations. We can pick only 15, 20 books to talk to you about, but there's over 70 or 80 books in the bazaar, in our ghostly and ghastly bazaar. My next set of books, and I have them as a pair of three books, which are lovely mystery, haunted horror stories that we'd recommend for 10 plus year olds. And I love Bad Moon Rising. Look at the cover, look at that full moon and ghosts and ghouls, so conducive to being scared silly out of your wits. And what happens in when there's a bad moon that rises, there's always murder, mystery, and mayhem that follows, isn't it? We know it already. How many horror films have we all watched? How many seriously supernatural films have you watched with your eyes closed? Oh my God, I can sort of not see and see maybe what's going on really, right? And these books, that sense of like the quickening of your pulse, and the heart beating faster, they're all a sense of the fact that murder, mayhem, and some grisly stuff lies ahead for you. This anthology, which has been edited by Ranjit Lal, master writer Ranjit Lal, bringing together stories by Satyajit Ray, by Payal Dhar, by Anshumani Rudra, Sonia Chandrachud, Poily Sengupta, some of India's best storytellers who guarantee to keep you awake at night. And yes, like I said, there's a writer whose murder stories mysteriously start to come true. There's a polite young man who steals far more than just money. Does he steal your dreams? Is he part human? Is he a werewolf? My gosh, seriously spooky stories. And you can hear the werewolf right outside Funky Rainbow's office. We have actually locked our doors tight and shut our windows for this ghostly, ghastly bazaar. And I should not be laughing, but as also another anthology, the Puffin Book of Spooky Ghost Stories, with a fantastic introduction by none other than Jerry Pinto, who's also contributed a wonderful story to this anthology. And, talking, I mean, again, a collection of stories by wonderful writers like Shashi Warrior, Payal Dhar, Asha Nehmaya, Paro Anand, Ranjit Lal, Subhadra Sengupta, Aditi Rao, Anita Vajrajani, some of the best names in Indian children's writing. And Shantanu Datta Gupta says that woo sounded like a ghostly fart. We're going to have to give him some seriously haunted stuff to figure whether to see the fart is on which side, frankly, like, right? So you see, what are these 13 ghostly, ghastly tales all about? They are one absolutely only for brave hearts, because there are hauntings, there are eerie happenings, there are spine chilling creatures that pop out of the pages, and every page has something that goes bump just when you're not expecting it. Really a seriously wonderful spooky collection. And like Jerry Pinto says in his introduction, I love what he says in the first paragraph. Okay, here's a true confession you won't hear from most adults. I don't know if there are ghosts or not. Any adult who tells you that he knows there are no ghosts is lying. All right, and there are these wonderful, spooky, really scary ghosts that you can meet in this sinister anthology as well, the Puffin anthology of spooky ghost stories. All these recommended for 10 plus. And if we are talking of spooky stories for 10 plus year olds, how can we keep Indian ghost stories at bay? So there is the Puffin and a book of Indian ghost stories edited by Ruskin Bond, a man who's really made ghost stories his own. And our next clutch of recommendations will have some wonderful ones by Bond. He has picked some excellent stories, especially the one by Rudyard Kipling. I just love that. This one is called The Strange Ride of Morrowby Jukes. Even the name has quite a sinister ring to it. Remy Das, you have not left the bazaar. I can see you said bye to us, but you're now holding your eyes over and saying, yes, I want to hear more. Shantanu saying, now this Bond book is terrifying. I remember reading it as a kid. Absolutely. I actually revisited it just last week, and I was like, nails are proof of the pudding. Basically, they're all chewed up. There's a superb one by Arthur Conan Doyle, who's written the Sherlock Holmes ones called The Brown Hand. And there are writers from different parts of the world, writing about spooky creatures, great and small, and really even an R.K. Narayan story. Even an R.K. I mean, we think everything is nice and happy in R.K. Narayan's world, but there's one called Around the Temple. What is around the temple? Is this a goddess with her tongue open and skulls around her neck? I'm not telling you more than that. But there's Victor Banerjee, who's written a fantastic story. There's that old and wonderful correspondent, journalist Jug Suraya, with a fantastic ghost story. Boy, supernatural tales that are that sort of, and this is true of some of the best horror stories. Right in the middle of like a freaky horror story or scene in a book, you'll find yourself laughing. That laugh is just you keeping your fear at bay, folks. And this one really has those some fantastic ones that are going to make you laugh, that are also going to make you feel seriously spooked. This one published by Penguin, all three of them that we recommend. And I reckon we don't have too many copies of these ones. So there's Bad Moon Rising, there's the Puffin Book of Spooky Ghost Stories, and the Penguin Book of Indian Ghost Stories, one edited by Ranjit Lal, one edited by Jerry Pinto, and one by Ruskin Bond. Fabulous anthologies for 10 plus year olds and all adults who have come back to watch the bazaar despite having to leave. Our next set of recommendations, and yes, because there was so much of a clamor for Ruskin Bond. I mean, we have, I think, what, 18, 20 books by Ruskin Bond, probably even more. My colleague Sujita is in the dark lifting her thumb, and she has a phone shining on something looking seriously spooky. I'm going to ask you to check if it's seriously Sujita or somebody else out here, like, right? So we do have a clutch of Ruskin Bond books, but I'm going to pick this wonderful series, that came out from Penguin. and this one called A Face in the Dark, and the other one When Darkness Falls. You know, all of you know this famous story, right, about Ruskin Bond, who famously said that while he does not believe in ghosts at all, he sees them all the time. Wise man, absolutely brilliant writer, living right up in the hills, and you can imagine his ghosts. You know, he encounters ghosts everywhere where he goes. It could be in the woods, it could be in a bar, it could be in a crowd right outside a cinema theater. And it's not just ghosts, he's meeting jinns, he's meeting witches, he's meeting monsters. This fantastic paranormal collection by Ruskin Bond, absolutely, and its title is just so lovely, A Face in the Dark and Other Hauntings. Come on, we've got to read these serious hauntings and enjoy the stories. And you know, he begins so well by quoting one of those fantastic memorable lines from Shakespeare's Hamlet, saying, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy or literature." And that's Hamlet, which is again a Shakespearean play that features a ghost who's at the center of the story in more ways than one. So we do have, and these are, you know, all Bond stories himself. There are, I think, 8 or 10. And some of these, you know, you would be quite familiar because you probably have read them in other anthologies or heard of them. There's The Wind on a Haunted Hill. It's a book that we have in our collection as a slim chapter book for the younger readers, for 7-year-olds, which is about two kids who have to get back home, and the wind starts howling. And what happens to those children? In this anthology, there's a, you know, an older version of that story. I'm sure you've heard of Seven Husbands for Susanna, right? Sat Khoon Maaf. I'm sure many of you have actually seen that movie, Susanna, the merry widow who ruthlessly just murders seven husbands, maybe more. That one is from this collection called When Darkness Falls, you know, by Ruskin Bond. And all of these are not anthologies that he has edited, but they are stories that he has written, all of them featuring ghosts, spooks, paranormal, paranormal things that are happening in the world of these characters. And there are four in this series. There was A Face in the Dark, there's When Darkness Falls, there's A Season of Ghosts, and there is Secrets. Fantastic stuff. Bond's writing simply cannot be faulted at all. And the way he evokes this mood of everything dark and unnatural around you, my gosh, it really has you absolutely riveted. There's another set of books by Bond, and I'm just going to quickly show you a couple of these covers. We would recommend all these for 10 plus year olds and for all adults, because Ruskin Bond's writing style is, it's just absolutely ageless. I know many people commented in the course of the bazaar saying Ruskin Bond. So here they are. We've got The Laughing Skull. Aha. What can be more spooky than a skull that just laughs back at you? Seriously, folks. I mean, you know, and in this book, there's not just skulls, there are rats. And is there, you know, what is that rat doing? Is it haunting you? Is it like running around in the dark in your room? And are those skulls coming tumbling out of anybody's closet? My God. There's Bond, and this is exactly how he begins that story, where he says, in the middle of the night I woke to a loud rattling sound. A rat, perhaps? Not sure, but I got up and I could hear that sound out of my cupboard. As soon as I opened the cupboard door, out popped a skull, landing right at my feet and bouncing into the drawing room. Guys, you will not be laughing about this laughing skull. A couple of more in this series as well. The Chakrata cat. And I love the spooky cat picture on that cover. Is she possessed? Is she going to possess you? And there is, of course, when the clock strikes 13. How many times have we heard this? What happens when your clock strikes 13? Be dead sure that you're going to be dead pretty soon, right? I mean, but there are spooks lurking around the corner when the clock strikes 13. And the Rupa Book of Haunted Houses, my God, spooks and haunted houses, how well hand in hand they go. We today definitely Funky Rainbow being quite haunted as well. As you can see, a giant clutch of books from that master storyteller Ruskin Bond. Not just these, so many more in our collection. And like I said, he says he absolutely doesn't believe in ghosts, but he sees them everywhere, and you will too once you've read his books. All different price points of these books, some at 250 rupees and some at 150 rupees, 195, 200. Just a whole clutch of books by that master storyteller Ruskin Bond. All of them available on our site, www.funkyrainbow.com. Please click on the tab that says Book Bazaar, and the first drop down item will be The Ghostly and the Ghastly. All these books and so many more in our collection today. We are moving towards seriously haunted stuff. So, for those of you who are not so scared, please continue watching. Others, be afraid, be pretty afraid. This is a wonderful, my next recommendation, and I'll just do a clutch of them because we will, show you some of our new arrivals on our shelves, and then invite the guest of the day today, who's also going to come to haunt you with her seriously dark tales. But my next recommendation, this fantastic anthology published by Scholastic called Horror. The oldest and most strongest of emotions. Seriously, horror, my God. Fear that grips you and never lets you go. This collection, again, an anthology, and it mixes stories, it mixes graphic novels, again, by, and very, very, I love the way the book has been designed. It's absolutely a spine tingling collection of horror stories featuring some very well known names from the Indian children's publishing space and some new voices in contemporary writing as well. Hashtag horror, Shantanu is saying, indeed, it is hashtag horror. There's Siddhartha Sharma, one of my favorite stories in this collection. And just do be very afraid of opening this one. It's called The Textbook by C.G. Salamander. It's a graphic novel. I mean, it's a graphic story, actually. And you can see this graphic story. Muttama is already snuggling up with her rugs, saying, no way, this is not for me. But man, these ones just absolutely leaving you quite chilled to the core. There are murders, of course, in a book of horror. There is the legend of a woman who has killed herself by hanging herself from a tree. There are two friends who meet at a club and almost become friends. And there is this there is this girl who opens a textbook. And what happens? Open this book, folks, read it for great unadulterated horror of the best kind. And like I said, writers including Siddhartha Sharma, Satadru Mukherjee, Anukta Ghosh, there's Kairavi Bharatram, there is C.G. Salamander. In fact, Salamander has two stories in this collection. Really scary stuff. So that is an anthology of horror, as is another anthology. And we would recommend horror for 12 plus year olds, I mean, and adults of all ages, including this collector's item, which is an anthology of horror stories that are sure to haunt you. These are classic stories, classic from different, writers from across the world. So there's Saki, there's Mark Twain, there's O. Henry, there's, Charles Dickens, there's Edgar Allan Poe. There's that master writer of horror stories, M.R. James, who I'm sure our guest today will certainly recommend. And there's Bram Stoker with his Dracula. I mean, we don't have Dracula here, but the story in this anthology is Dracula's Guest. There's Jerome K. Jerome, Rudyard Kipling. What a fantastic anthology of 50 of some of the greatest spooky stories. And, not just greatest, timeless stories that are absolutely worth. I mean, the collection is going to enchant you and haunt you for sure. This one published by Rupa, priced at 295 rupees, and this horror collection published by Scholastic, priced at 299 rupees. Seriously spooky stuff, folks. Now I'm feeling the horror as well just right now. A clutch of more recommendations, maybe one or two more, that's it. Let me see what I'm going to pick for you. I'll do Andali Wajid. She's a writer that whose writing I really enjoy. And this book, Shantanu Datta Gupta saying Satyajit Ray wrote some great ghost stories. Indeed, actually, just this morning there's a librarian from a school in Hyderabad called Sushweta who sent us a fantastic newspaper clipping on Ray's ghost stories. And we do have in our bazaar The Secret of the Cemetery, of a mystery that starts off in a city and then makes its way into the cemetery. Yes, Ray writing charming ghost stories and seriously spooky ghost stories as well. Charming ones like Goopy Gain Bagha Bain, of the singer and drummer, the horrendous music of these two singers, which the king of ghosts in the jungle absolutely enjoys. So, yes, Ray, a master storyteller, and we do have one or two of his books in our bazaar collection. I particularly remember The Secret of the Cemetery. But to come back to Andali Wajid's House of Screams, and we do know that, she has that wonderful, book for 12, 13 plus year olds. We have it in our collection, isn't it, Suji? Andali's other book, The Legend of Wolf. Fantastic, story of, teenagers who go for a school trip and they find themselves in a house that a wolf keeps coming to every night and howling. My God, how well Andalib recreates, the horror of being stuck in a haunted house. And with House of Screams, this is seriously spooky stuff. It's a notch higher. Munira, the protagonist of the book, she has inherited a house from her uncle. It's a grand house on Myrtle Lane, and she decides she's going to move in there with her husband Zain and their 3-year-old son Adnan. Man, it's such a pleasure to live in a bungalow, really, isn't it? So much space, great driveway, lovely garden in the front and at the back. But this sprawling bungalow has a lot more than old world charm to it. And what is it? What does it have? Bloody hands on the walls, screams that rent the air all around. Be very afraid, folks, to read this one by Andali Wajid. Can Munira, and are the ghosts coming after her husband Zain? Are the ghosts coming after her son Adnan? What can Munira do? What a fantastic book of, what a fantastic ghost story this is. House of Screams that will leave you literally screaming for more. uh, Sorry. All right, just one or two quick one more quick recommendation. I know we have very, very many more, but we'd recommend one or two for 15 plus year olds. Some of them, one of which I'm only halfway through at the moment. But these two combined books, Sham, will you move up to these books? I know I skipped a couple in between, basically, is Haunted, real life encounters with ghosts and spirits. Oh, I can see Joanne Saldana. Good morning or good night, as the mood may seem just at the moment, Joanne. And you say, Team FR, you're going to catch up with your recommendations later. You are visiting your mum, we know, and absolutely allowed. I certainly know that many mums are great repositories of ghost stories. No better way to make children eat than by telling them ghost stories. And you said, I picked up Goopy Gain Baghabain from you, and what a delight it was. Really, what a charming chapter book, Satyajit Ray's Goopy Gain Baghabain. And you say, I love the dark fashion choice for today's dark theme. Great personal styling. I learnt that word from you, Joanne Saldana. Styling and me are as far as ghosts from Mutama, basically, right? And yes, to come back to the seriously spooky collection, and this is 15 plus here, folks. Seriously, haunted real life encounters with ghosts and spirits, written by Jay Alani with Neil De Silva. You know what this book does, and it's for all you travelers out there. It takes you into the spookiest places in India. What is that? Real places or not, you've got to read and find out. But there's an entire town that has been abandoned overnight, a fort that falls to ruins because of a curse, 20,000 miners trapped in a mine, and all of whom ultimately perish. A village where magic is the way of life, and a fair where exorcism is the thing that people go to over there. My God, you've got to check out these paranormal locations across the country. All you adventurers, all you tourists, all you travelers out there, be prepared to meet your maker. Sorry about that. Not meet your maker, but literally meet your maker through the words of Jay Alani and Neil De Silva's book. Joanne Saldana saying, my mom is more likely to give me prayers and the Bible to keep these ghosts away. Please send them right here. Many people looking for the rosary and Bible and the Bible to keep the ghosts at bay. And of course, there's this one, which is, I've only read halfway, which came to us last week. Again, recommended for 15 plus year olds, called India's Most Haunted by K. Harikumar. What are this book, I mean, and I have read three stories, and again, these are stories from really terrifying places: the suicide station of Kolkata, the bloody river of Rohini, Melkote's Mohini. Who do you think Melkote's Mohini is? Believe me, that Yakshi is going to leave you quite petrified for sure. This book is the stuff of the best nightmares ever. I've read only 5 stories in the book so far, and I seriously have traveled from Warangal to Melkote to Kashmir to Jammu, getting haunted in every single place that the book has stopped at. Tales of terrifying places, priced at 499 rupees, definitely recommended for 15 plus year olds. And the last book, and this is just a personal indulgence, and this is primarily for all of you, not the kids, not the young adults watching, because they're probably going to figure our age very easily from this. But how many of you remember the Ramsay brothers? How many of you have watched those Ramsay brothers movies with your eyes closed like this? I remember several in my childhood, and watching these. Sham, did something go wrong? Watching some of these films just this way. And there's one fantastic book that has come out called Ghosts in Our Backyard, where they talk about every Shantanu Datta Gupta saying Z horror show, indeed Z horror show. I mean, hideously made shows, hideously made films, but so seriously spooky. And this one by Alicia Preeti Kirplani, actually takes you to the Ramses real life encounters with the supernatural before they made their films. I'm sorry for this personal indulgence. It just had me chuckling that somebody still remembers those horror shows, and the Ramsay brothers, who are institutions, I'm sure, in the who are absolute institutions when it comes to these horrible horror movies. There's this book that demystifies, the real life horror encounters that that sort of that were like, sort of, let's say, the brainchild behind some of their movies. This one is, of course, entirely for adults, priced at 299 rupees. Gives you a good insight into their filmmaking, to their TV shows as well. So this one recommended for all you adults who remember the Ramsay brothers while chewing your nails, basically, or while watching the shows with your eyes shut. We are, of course, ready to welcome our guest for the day. Sham, is there some, the lights gone off or what? Like, which one? Okay, so something needs to be fixed.
Just give me 1 minute.
Just 1 second, a small little glitch. Can I, continue
Yeah.
on the show?
Yeah.
Chantanu Datta Gupta saying faces of the ghouls looking like tandoori chicken, cutting edge makeup, 100%. But don't tell us, Shantanu, that you weren't seriously spooked, okay? I mean, they were the stuff of our, absolutely growing up years. You would laugh, of course, because you knew that the ghost there was dressed like tandoori chicken, but seriously, horror, horrifying horror there. And this one, I mean, I was just delighted to see a book. And I do know Shamya Das Gupta has written one as well, but, we couldn't get that book into Funky Rainbow. Delighted to see one on the Ramsay brothers. Personally, one of the books that I've utterly and absolutely enjoyed, and I'm saying this because Sham's temporarily fixing something, in the tech part of this, our setup. So while he gets that fixed, Shantanu says, I was actually terrified by the movie Evil Dead, even though it was so camp. Seriously, my really go-to terrifying book and movie is Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. I have never known. Sham, there's all kinds of things that have come up.
Yes,
Keep your.
spooks in the house.
Oh, yes. Muttama says there's
Ghosts
all
in
kinds of
the
things popping up on my computer. Not sure what Sham's doing, or not sure if it's Sham's doing, even, really. But one of my most favorite ones is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, which is made into a film by Alfred Hitchcock. I have never read a book in my life where the protagonist, I mean, the person after whom the book is named, is dead from the word go, and terrorizes the protagonist of the story right through, along with the evil Mrs. De Winter. My God, what a fantastic, mystery and terrifying read Rebecca is, written so wonderfully. That's got to be one of my favorite ones. Shantanu saying, ooh, getting goosebumps from Rebecca. Are we ready to welcome our guest of the day? Shams not giving me the go ahead, or the ghost in the office is, oops, not giving me the go ahead as yet. But let's get ready to welcome a wonderful writer onto our show today. I don't know if she's there. Sham, can you please just check?
She's there.
And
She's there.
okay, all right.
Can you switch the camera?
Sorry.
Can you switch the camera? TV1.
1 second, just 1 second. Sorry, folks, for some glitch. How do, what do I? Okay, you want me to change the camera to?
ZV1.
Okay, ZV1. All right, done. Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay, and we are back. And Shantanu is saying, I'm ready to troll Venita. Yes, folks, let's welcome our guest this morning, Venita Coelho, award winning author, screenwriter, novelist, and artist who writes across different age groups and different genres. Welcome, Venita. I think Sham's bringing you up on the stream. Ah,
Are
we
you scared yet? Special effects, exactly like the Ramsey brothers, right?
One the computer speaker is not letting us hear you for sure, Vanita. 1 second.
You can't hear me.
Yes, absolutely. Terrific, spooky entrance to our ghostly and ghastly bazaar, Vanita. May I show you that for your own, for this bazaar, we have a skull lamp lit up here, which apparently can make some really petrifying sounds. All this
Oh,
set up
okay.
for dark tales, essentially. But, ladies and gentlemen, absolutely a pleasure to bring Vanita into the show. She's won so many awards for her book. Her book, Dead as the Dodo, has won her the Bal Sahitya Puraskar. It won her the Hindu Young World Good Books Awards as well. She won the Hindu Young World Good Books Awards for Boy Number 32, a couple of years ago. The Neve Book Award for All of Me. And her collection of feminist ghost stories has The Washer of the Dead, was longlisted for the Frank O'Connor Award. Vanita, of course, has had a long career in film and television as a writer, director, and producer. But we are here with her today because she's a ghost hunter like no other. And we are going to be talking about
Mhm.
her darned scary collection of stories. Look at my nails. I've chewed them all off reading primarily Vanita Coelho's book, Dark Tales, Ghost Stories from India. Welcome again, Vanita. Can you
Hi,
hear me, Vanita?
Shantanu. Hi, Asha. Hi, everyone out there.
So, one sec, Sham. Are we able to hear the
Yeah, it's a bit glitchy.
there seems to be some kind of glitch, Vanita, a little bit of a slow internet connection, perhaps. So many people saying hello to you.
Okay.
Shantanu saying he's ready to troll you. Asha Nehmaya saying hello to you. CA Pooja Ailwadi saying hi, ma'am. And Sunila Kulkarni Gupta almost doing a werewolf kind of call saying, woohoo, welcome, Vanita. I'm going to start off with, some of my questions for you, Vanita. Uh,
Okay. So what
should
I'm
we
trying to
go?
do meanwhile with Vidya is switch to my phone. Maybe that'll be a bit better. Okay.
Mhm.
So yeah,
We can.
yeah.
You know
Ask
what?
your
Switch. By
question.
then, I'll show people.
I'm on my computer. I'm just switching to my phone, but ask. I can
Okay,
hear you
okay,
clearly.
because this connections just seemed a bit patchy. Like, all right, and so shall I, ask you one of my first questions? Are you ready, or you want to switch to the phone connection, Vanita? All
Ask,
right.
by which time I'll have switched.
Okay, done. So tell us, why are we children, young adults, and adults absolutely fascinated by things that go bump at at night or even in the day?
Okay. So first, can you hear me?
Very well.
Am I audible? Okay,
Yes.
great. You know, I think all stories started off with all these scared cavemen sitting around a fire, looking over their shoulders at the dark. And I think that cavemen still persists. You know, the shadows in the dark are different. The monsters that scare us now are very different. You know, their toxic spills and their genetic mutations and a nuclear war. But there are always monsters in the dark, and therefore we will always turn to horror stories as a form of some sort of catharsis, and certainly as a way to also understand our world. So, yes, horror stories are here to stay. And I really find it fascinating that the more that science shines a torch, you know, in the dark corners, the more fearful we get, actually. Because I don't think there's been a miracle of science that hasn't eventually turned into some sort of curse to scare us even more. So, yeah, there will always be fears, there will always be ghosts of all kinds that haunt us.
Absolutely. There are always going to be, things that make you afraid. And I just feel that, the emotions that you feel when you're, reading a book of horror or you're seeing a horror film, that quickening of your pulse, the heartbeat, and, it's so akin to what you feel when you're feeling excited. So really, I mean, horror stories, I think reminding you that you are in control of the world, and you can close it or put it away, and that there's probably a better world in the books. I wanted to ask you, Sunila, Vanita, so many women seem to, uh, constitute spooky ghosts from all over the world. There's the night demon from Tanzania. There's the girl in the bathroom in Japan. There's the woman of your worst dreams from Brazil. There's the weeping woman from Mexico, and we have our yakshis and mohinis and chudels. Tell me, why do so many women come back from the dead to haunt the world, and particularly maybe men?
I think because in real life, so many women are ghosts. Women are largely powerless in society. And the most unexpected kind of ghost is the one who's powerless in real life and then returns as a huge power once they're dead. And I really, really think this haunting on behalf of women happens because the actual status in real life is so marginal. So it is those who have no power in real life that are the most powerful when they come back. You should be scared of the wrath of a woman, especially when she's dead. That's been my unfit. I also think it's because women are still at the end of the day quite a dark mystery. We are not that easily solvable. Um, and that I think also is why there's been so many attempts by society to tame women. Because we are at heart women who run with wolves. And without this whole apparatus of marriage and children and society, we would be very difficult to tame and control. And once we're dead and out there, that's when we really run wild. And there's so many of these stories built around haunting women.
So well said. I think Vanita's screen has frozen again, has it? Uh, yes, I think. Okay, while I read out some comments, Vanita, your screen seems to have frozen a bit. Many people saying that they
Oh,
loved
give me a
your
minute. I'm going to get
videos.
back on my phone. Give me 1 second.
Sure. While you come back on the phone, I'm going to call out some comments. Take your time. Sunila saying that she loved the videos that you made. Joanna too saying, Joanne Saldana too saying that I absolutely love them and that your mum is such a sport. David Williams from Australia, how wonderful to see you at the bazaar. You say there's always a ghost in the machine when it comes to greeting the guest. But that new camera on Vidya looks really colorful now. Loved Vanita's low cost horror lighting too. Now I'm all ears. Thank you, David Williams, for joining us all the way from Australia and being so astute about all the camera work, low cost or not, at Vanita's end and our end. Ramendra Kumar saying, hi Vanita, I got my copy of Dark Tales yesterday and read 3 tales, spookalicious Adbhoot stories. Adbhoot stories, master of puns, Ramendra Kumar. But tell us, Vanita, about your latest collection of ghost stories from India, Dark Tales. Can we just play the trailer because of how many people who've appreciated the trailer for this book? Do you think we could just play the trailer before you respond to that query, Vanita?
Sure.
Sham, yes.
Hi, my name is Vinita Coelho and I'm the author of this book, Dark Tales. What scares you? What is it that you're afraid of in the dark? You might just find it waiting for you in this book, which is a collection of really scary stories. In fact, it's so scary that if you're below 15, I would suggest that you not read it. And if you're above 15,
Okay.
I dare you to read it.
Are you guys playing the trailer? Because I'm not.
Just scare you.
No,
I don't have it
we
queued
are,
up.
We are playing it. We are playing it. We'll tell you as soon as it's done.
In here,
Vanita.
you find.
Daniel thought I'm supposed to play it, and I was like, oh my god.
No. We
You
are
find the
playing
god
trailer.
of all drunks. You find a good wife who's done a very bad thing. You find a story built around a selfie that will make you scared to pick up your phone again. They're all in here waiting for you, 11 stories of fear. Go ahead, read them. Just don't read them in the dark. Dark Tales. Don't read these in the dark.
Just don't read them in the dark. Dark Tales. Go ahead, Vanita. Tell us about this latest collection of ghost stories of yours.
Okay, So I love the ghost story format. And I said, if I'm going to do a collection, I want to scare the whole of India. Let's scare everybody. So then I thought about what is it that's, embedded in our subconscious as a nation that could possibly scare us. So then I looked at the things that had scared me. And there was the Nirbhaya case, which is every woman's worst nightmare. There was the Upkar cinema case, which, I mean, can you imagine? You go to watch a movie and there's a fire and you can't get out and you're burned to death. And there were just so many. There was Nithari killings. So I said, this is what terrified the whole of India. And I took all of these contemporary happenings, headlines from newspapers, and I added the supernatural to them. So I said, maybe this is one way to get inside the head of India and scare it. So that's where the collection actually comes from. It comes out of this taking a look at the landscape of horror in India itself, coming out of our daily newspaper headlines.
Yeah, it is absolutely, it's so many horrors of contemporary India, like you said, the Nithari killings, the Nirbhaya case. And it does seem when you read these stories that you're making a social and political commentary of some sort. I mean, and by introducing the supernatural into your stories. For instance, in the Nirbhaya story, I mean, the story that's loosely based on the Nirbhaya case, that woman fights back. The ghost of that woman fights back, really. And it's got a macabre ending, if ever there was one. And we're not giving it away to the audience. But why? Why are you choosing to make these political and social commentaries through your ghost stories, Vanita?
I think when you write ghost stories, there's also an ethical stand that you take. Are you just going to write spooky stuff to scare people and sell books? Are you going to exploit blood, gore, and spatter to sell books? I don't want to do that. I think in a country like India, where there's already so much superstition, where even today women get paraded as witches, they get chopped and killed and burnt out of superstition, where we have tantrics who are killing children. This is real in India. I think as a writer, you have to come into any kind of supernatural story with some kind of ethical, you know, stand. So my thing was, I want to use this very, very powerful medium, not just to scare people, but also to make them think about contemporary issues. And that's what I did. It's something I've done earlier in another book called The Wash of the Dead, which is a collection of feminist ghost stories, where, you read the ghost stories, but they actually all make very feminist points. And this comes to me out of my background in television. I'm a TV girl. And the first thing that I learned is that you have to hold them before you can speak to them. You have to entertain them before you can touch them. And to me, the ghost story medium is so powerful because even more powerful than love is the emotion of fear.
Yes.
So if you can touch that chord of fear, then you can really make people listen and think. So that's what I tried to do.
Wonderful. Yes, really wonderful response to use that emotion, such a strong emotion it is of fear and horror, basically, to make people, to force them out of their complacency and make them think. Sunila Kulkarni saying, I absolutely agree with Vanita about women. They have a huge canvas to paint on and the freedom that they've never had in real life, coming into books. And she says, your response to that query was fantastic. We could relate to these because we know, at once of so many real life horrors. David Williams saying, my goodness, Vanita, have you ever read your own stories as audiobooks? To judge from that trailer, you really have the scary making nightmare voice for it. Getting the thumbs up from all over the world. You also have Whisper in the Wind, isn't it, Vanita, which is a gothic horror story set in Goa. Why don't you just tell us, our audience, about it? We do have copies of
So
Whisper
I have
in the Wind.
Yeah, I have three books in this genre. The first was Wash of the Dead, which is a collection of feminist ghost stories. The second is my little love gift to Goa. It's called Whisper in the Wind, and it's a Goa Gothic. It's set in the Portuguese era. In fact, it's set in the year that India got independence, 1949, because 1947. Goa didn't get independence till many years later, and it's got a large old haunted house, it's got a ghost, it's got a writer who's struggling to find a story. And I had so much fun putting into that book the 21 years that I've lived in Goa, the monsoon, the flowers, the smells, the eeriness, the church bells. So yeah, Whisper in the Wind. If you want a good Gothic story to read, Whisper in the Wind is there. And now there's Dark Tales. So 3 books.
Absolutely second that one. I loved, Whisper in the Wind, beginning with this encounter with the author's encounter with a madman, setting the tone for that gothic horror right from the word go, really. So many of your books, actually, for children and for adults, featuring ghosts, graveyards, haunted mansions, characters who blur the lines between the living and the dead. Why, Vanita, this fascination with horror and with this, with the people that sort of, I don't know, like I said, that, blur the boundaries between the living and the dead.
Okay, so my fascination really you have to blame my mother for. She scarred me when I was a child. We used to live in Calcutta and there'd be all these power cuts, and every time there's a power cut, she would light a single candle and then she would tell us these scary stories. And we'd be petrified and we'd be hanging on to her and we wouldn't want her to stop. We'd keep saying, and then. And to me, that became such a powerful lesson in what a storyteller should be. I said, that's what I want to do. I want to tell stories that grip people, and wait, you're terrified, but you're saying, and then, because you can't stop, you have to know. So that's really what I've tried to do. I also like the Twilight Zone. I like the space between the living and the dead because it's an unknown, uncharted space. To me, in many ways, it's also the gray area that lies underneath your conscious self. So when you're writing in that gray zone, you're not only writing about ghosts, you're also making statements about people and the ghosts that haunt them internally. You're making statements about the demons in the outside world and the demons in the inside world. So this space lends itself to all kinds of metaphors. It lends itself to layered storytelling. And I really, really like doing that.
Wonderful response. There was this a piece that I read in the Guardian, and I have a small quote from it which I think reflects your answer so well. In reading books that frighten us, we have the choice of whether to explore our fears or not, but if we do, we come away knowing that monsters can indeed be defeated. Really, right? And it is when you read these stories, most of the times you're being told these stories sitting together. Your mother was narrating it, 5 cousins or like siblings sitting together. And I think that the closeness that tumbles out of that experience of fear is truly really special. And I think that's why ghost stories will just live on forever. There are ghost and horror stories from everywhere in the world, Vanita. Do you have some recommendations? Are there books that you would like to recommend to our audience?
Oh, absolutely. My God, so many. I've been reading, horror books forever, ghost books forever. In the old classics, you cannot do better than M.R. James. If there is a master of atmosphere, that is M.R. James. He writes stories that are so simple on the surface who terrify the pants off you. The other master of horror who I really love is Stephen King. And what I know he writes these enormous, long, fabulous books, but what I love is his short story horror. And you can see how much I love it from the shape of this book. Can you see that? It's ripped off. I've read it so much, it's fallen apart. And this is Nightmares and Dreamscapes. There you can see Nightmares and Dreamscapes.
Wow.
A fabulous collection of short stories. My God, Stephen King, when he does a short story, he takes all the horror that sprawls across a novel and squishes into one single story. So it really, really works. And here's another bashed and battered Stephen King, and this one is called Skeleton Crew. Again, a collection of short stories, absolutely marvelous. So if you haven't read Stephen King as a short story writer, this is a great place to begin.
Wow.
I have a whole list of favorites, but one of the books that recently scared me a lot, which I caught up with after a long time, was called Heart-Shaped Box. If you haven't read Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill, you should read it.
Wow.
And there is another Gothic book called Mexican Gothic by a writer called Silvia Moreno Garcia. It was just released last year. And by God, she takes that Gothic genre and does some really fabulous things with it. There's Susan Hill, who's fantastic. There's Brian Evenson, who's fantastic. Lots and lots of things to choose from.
I
Oh,
remember you
Clive
mentioned.
Barker, not to forget Clive Barker, Books of Blood. Really good. So that's a whole lot of recommendations for you guys.
I remember you said Neil Gaiman. Oh yes, please tell us.
Neil Gaiman. For kids, I don't know whether I would. I don't know whether I'd recommend it for a kid, though they're technically for kids. Coraline scared the hell out of me. Graveyard Book, I loved, and it was scary. It was genuinely scary. My daughter loved Graveyard Book. So, Graveyard Book is a good one to start kids off on. And Coraline, I don't know, read it first yourself because it's pretty damn scary. When that little doll with the parents with the boot button eyes turn around to look at you, you're like, so yeah, Neil Gaiman for sure.
Yes, yes. Some wonderful recommendations. Thanks to you. Definitely going to read more M.R. James and pick up Stephen King's short stories. I mean, we all know of him as that master novelist, right? I mean, books like Misery that have you chewing your nails about, what's going to happen to that writer. Is he going to get killed by that crazy fan of his, essentially? But my God, some wonderful recommendations out there. In the last years, with some audiovisual medium getting all pervasive and intrusive, the envelope of horror has been pushed so much that it must be a huge challenge to create something new which would scare, spook, and shock the reader. And I think Vanita has truly done that with, her book Dark Tales. Asha Nehemiah saying Gaiman's The Ocean at the End of the Lane, another fantastic spooky read as well. Vanita, we always, I mean, we, most people watching the bazaar, they're adults, they're parents, they're teachers, they're librarians, they want to give their kids, books to read, and they're looking for recommendations. But, this question that we're often asked, should kids read scary stories? My response to it is going to be a thundering yes, but I want you to say, what your response is, and what do you think that parents, teachers, and librarians should do to help children explore their fears?
As a child, so much of the world is unknown. Everywhere there are little labels saying, here there be dragons. The world is a very fearful place. And horror is the first genre that kids are introduced to. Okay? Take a look at Snow White. What happens? The stepmother asks for a heart to be cut out. Look at Cinderella. What do the stepsisters do? They self-mutilate. They cut off their toes to stick them in, in the feet. Look at Red Riding Hood. It's a warning tale about sexual predators. So you must understand that scary stories have been used from time immemorial to teach lessons, to warn you that yes, indeed, here there be dragons, and this is how you deal with them. So I don't know why parents worry about introducing kids to horror. You've already done it. If you picked up a collection of stories and not those six sweetly disgusting, sentimental fairy stories, but if you've picked up the ones that have lasted across hundreds of years, the reason they've lasted is because all of those stories tap into primal fears. They teach you about dealing with those fears. And that actually is the joy of storytelling. You can deal with your fears on the page in a safe space, knowing that when I read the story, I'm going to come out at the end of the story alive, not dead.
Yeah.
So, horror stories, scary stories are actually a very good way to work with children, to face their fears and to get past them. You're already doing it. You're already handing them very, very scary books. You might as well do it in a conscious manner. And the fact that the kids love horror is because kids are the most fearful. One of the best selling authors in the world is R.L. Stein with Goosebumps. It's a huge selling
Absolutely.
series for the same reason. Kids want to dabble, they want to push the edges, they want to peer into the shadows, and they want to do it from the safety of a page. So never be afraid of introducing your kid to horror, but certainly choose age appropriate horror. You don't want the child to read something and then be so petrified that it's being the bed in the nighttime, right? But you do want them to read something that they can get a nice little scary thrill off and get past. So please, I mean, there's no reason for parents not to give their kids horror to read. They've already done it.
Absolutely. I can see Shantanu saying Hansel and Gretel is downright terrifying, basically, right? It is.
Absolutely.
Being stuffed down a chimney, and Joanne Saldana saying the kids beg for scary tales in the library, and Edgar Allan Poe is a favorite with them. David Williams saying, I love Vanita's insight into women in horror. Women run with wolves when they free themselves from all the rules. And women always make the most terrifying villains in horror films, even when they're only pretty little girls, like Linda Blair as the devil's puppet
Yeah.
in The Exorcist.
Yep.
There's something unknowable in those eyes that boys absolutely don't have. That's what he's saying. And
Yep. Quite true.
absolutely. And Shantanu saying, Vanita, try Angela Carter's fairy tales, completely twisted and dark. But yes,
I have actually. They're very scary.
such wonderful insights there. Actually, I feel reading these scary books, it's a way to exorcise the demons and monsters that are in your own imagination, aren't they, really? And we do tell parents and teachers and librarians not to be afraid of giving scary stories to kids, and the point that you've so rightly made of picking age appropriate ones, Vanita. That was just a lovely bit of conversation with you. People, pick up Dark Tales. We'd recommend it for 15 plus year olds. It's Vanita's, a spectacular and spellbinding new collection of ghost stories from India. You're going to have a fantastic weekend if this is what you're reading, for sure. Thank you so much, Vanita, for joining us today. And such a
My
pleasure
pleasure.
to have you at the show.
See you. Bye.
Bye. So that was Vanita Kolo, giving us a sneak peek into her lovely book, Dark Tales, and why we must all read books of horror. I have, Neil Gaiman, when he was in Neil Gaiman, three books came up in Vanita's, two books came up in Vanita's recommendations, and Asha too recommended a lovely one by, Neil Gaiman at a conference in Vancouver on ghost stories. This is what he said. Fear is a wonderful thing in small doses. It is good to be a child again for a little while and to fear not governments, not regulations, not infidelities, and to not infidelities or accountants or distant wars, but ghosts and such things that don't exist, and even if they do, can do nothing to hurt us. What a lovely, thoughtful quote that is on why we should read seriously scary books. I truly hope our bazaar has introduced you to a gamut of them in the Indian children's context. There are smiley spooks, there are scary spooks, there are all kinds of spooks in our collection. Do check them out at our bazaar, on the website www.funkyrainbow.com. Click the tab that says Book Bazaar. The first drop down menu is the ghostly and the ghastly. Please do check all the books that we've put in this collection, and if they catch your attention, do consider picking them up. I can see so many of you thanking Vanita for this session, saying it was just utterly wonderful. Priya Muthukumar, Sunila saying the session was absolutely wonderful. Priya Muthukumar said, loved listening to Vanita. Thank you, Funky Rainbow and Vidya. We do, of course, have to thank her and, pick up her book if you seriously want to be spooked. I'm going to say hello to a clutch of more people who've joined us at the show you our new recommendations, and then say bye-bye for this spooky Saturday. But quickly, a round of hellos to people who've joined us: Dream Library Stories, Achu Chicks, The Purple Bicycle, Anjani Rajagopal, Neha Sethi Thakur, Arti Mutanna Singh, Suni Anup, Visma Vishwan, Visma Vasan, Sunila Kulkarni Gupte, Asha Nehmaya, C.A. Pooja Ailwadi, Joanne Saldana, David Williams, Ramendra Kumar, and Priya Muthu Kumar. Thank you so much for joining us at this fantastic session, with Vanita Kolo, and for the rest of the recommendations, from our ghostly and ghastly bazaar. We'll just quickly show you a couple of new books on our shelves. We haven't read these ones yet, but I'm just picking them out for you. Brand new arrivals on our shelves. Nandini Nayar's, new one in the mini series, Minis Books, lovely chapter book series with Minnie's Money and Minnie's Questions, the brand new one out here, which we haven't read as yet, Minnie's books, published by HarperCollins and priced at 150 rupees. There is Life Skills, a great book from DK on life skills, on how to be the best that you can be. And we would recommend this. I haven't read the book yet, but lots of, looks like there's like a lot of it's jam packed with skills and practical advice and real life examples on all kinds of things, from problem solving and communication to understanding, thinking, empathy, and more. There is one more, there are two more new books. Sham's not putting up the covers. There's Indian classical music and dance from Red Panda. It's one more book in that encyclopedia series of theirs where they had space. This one on India's classical music and dance, giving you information on different artists and their lives and the history of different musical instruments and music. And there is, of course, another one in the series, from Murder in Melucha by Aditi Krishnakumar, her first book in this series, a fantasy adventure that many children have loved. We haven't read this one yet. That is the Magicians of Mud series. This one, the second one in the Magicians of Mud series, Murder in Melucha by Aditi Krishnakumar, priced at 299 rupees, published by Duckbill. Those were some of the new arrivals on our shelves, folks. Hope you had a totally spooky time at our bazaar today, and we're really wishing you a ghostly weekend full of books on spooks of all shapes, sizes, and colors. Have a fantastic weekend, and do pick up books that we have recommended if you think they'd suit your reading requirements. We'll be back next week with another bazaar. Till then, keep reading, and bye bye.